Administrative Committee meeting. This is November 26th, 2018. I am Gina Terusio. To my right is Art Bedke, and to my left is Ann Zabala. To my far left is Gary Riedner, representing city staff. First item on our agenda is the approval of Administrative Committee meeting minutes from November 13th.
I thought they looked good.
I thought so too.
I thought they were well written.
You thought they were well written. That's awesome. Okay, so we approved them?
Yep.
Okay, the second item is the Idaho Office of Highway Safety 2019 Traffic Enforcement Grant Project Program. What a title, Elisa Anderson.
As you said, it's a mouthful, isn't it? The title to the contract keeps getting longer. As the description said, it's the Traffic Enforcement Grant Project Program. In short, that is TEGPA is what they're calling it this year. In prior years, it's been TEMA. You've heard us refer to that. So what we have before us today is the annual renewal of the Traffic Enforcement Mobilization Contract. And it continues on with the special mobilizations that the officers can do, or they can request to do a mini grant that is something more specialized to our community. The contract now allows us to use reserve officers if they're if they've worked over 40 hours, which has not been something we could do in the past. So that may be helpful for us if we have a staff shortage. Other than that, the contract is pretty standard compared to the last few years. The part of your packet that is thicker than the contract is the certification and assurances, which is attachment 1, and those are the federal standard assurances that we've seen approved through 3 other contracts so far this year through ITD. And then this year we have a subrecipient risk assessment form, which is just some basic standard questions regarding our accounting procedures and staffing levels and whether we're subject to single audit. So a very simple form to complete. So I will let Josh tell you a little bit about how the program went last year and what his plans are for this year.
Perfect. So Josh Lewis, and in case, I'm sure you guys see a lot of us in case you don't remember my name, but I am the traffic safety officer, or traffic officer for the PD. I've been in this position for just right about a year now. So I helped in this meeting a little bit last year, mainly just kind of watching and going through learning stuff. So I'll give you a little bit of idea of how this last year went for us and a little bit of knowledge in comparison to 2017 that I'm aware of. So again, like Alyssa said, this is about 18th year that we've been doing this agreement with ITD, to my understanding. And during 2018, we asked for and were awarded what we were asked for, right about $18,500 in money from ITD. That's down significantly from the year before when we used approximately $40,000 from ITD. But of the $18,500 that we asked for, we utilized $18,195 of that. We were granted the $18,500 and used $18,195. So during the mobilizations, we conducted 1,819 traffic stops. We issued 494 citations, 63 arrests. And that was our numbers for during the times that we were on emphasis in 2018. Those numbers are at or mostly above, and in fact we were higher in traffic contacts, higher in citations in 2018 than we were in 2017, and like I said before, 2017 we used twice as much of the money. So we had a very effective year last year, even though we didn't utilize as much overtime money from ITD. This year we also intend on applying for a grant, an equipment grant through ITD. We estimate it's going to come with some new printers, the new scanning software for our e-site, and we'll switch over to a statewide e-site or e-ticket program, which is what ISP and now Latah County and those are the two that I know of locally, but I know a lot of, in fact, I know Nez Perce County is going to it as well. So it's got some great advantages. It'll allow us to be able to see, for instance, if a car stopped down in Lewiston and they are issued a warning 2 hours later, we stop them, we'll be able to see that information fairly quickly. And we estimate that's going to be about $20,000 just from some rough numbers that we did towards the end of fiscal year last year. So, and I believe last year we came to you with the request for approval for, I think it was 45,000 initially. This year we did not obviously utilize that. This year we would like to ask for 50,000 just upfront as kind of like an approval of, so that we're hoping that that would cover our overtime emphases, the mini grant for the equipment and for the e-ticket stuff, and as well as any other mini grants that we would try to put together throughout the year. So that's that. Just a couple other things I wanted to touch on this year. The city is, the police department is kind of aware of, with the times and the grants that ITD offers, that with our new 12-hour shift that our officers are on, there's a good potential that we might not utilize as much or be able to fill as many overtime slots. A lot of the ITD grants are on a time limit to where they have to be done at nighttime hours, which ITD technically considers, I believe it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I've talked to them before and they said basically if it's dark and we can say it's nighttime, we're okay. Still, the problem is our officers are going to be out getting off at 6 o'clock at night or starting their shift at 6 o'clock at night. That's where we rotate. And so in order for them to go from a 12-hour shift into an overtime shift, it's not likely at all for that. And so basically they'd have to do it on their days off. We all know that when you're in 12s, kind of your days off are your days off, time to spend with your family, and give them some much needed rest. So there's an anticipation that we might have some lack of enthusiasm, I guess you would say, in some of these grants, but that also leaves the option for us to do some mini grants where we can schedule the times ourselves and allow the officers still to go out and look for distracted driving, texting while driving, whatever it is that we try to incorporate to help keep the streets safe and not have to fall under such tight restrictions of the ones that they offer. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at. I believe that covers pretty much what I wanted to talk to you about. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, or ask for some assistance with some questions if I can't answer them.
You have some questions, sir?
Just one, so this is sort of like a blanket acceptance for what could be a series of mini grants that come along, so we don't have to come back and
Yes, sir.
rehash
Right.
the whole works.
So to go into a little bit more detail for you, which I forgot to kind of talk about, is basically with the grant process, there isn't a soft match for the department or for the city or whatever, as long as we're doing the ITD grants that they offer. If we decided to do an equipment grant, such as the e-site or the e-ticket one that I talked about, there is a soft match of 25%. So with that, we can obviously make our soft match in a lot of different ways. If needed be, it would be something that could come out of operations budget, but if not, if we could do soft match with like running the radar and different enforcement actions with that new equipment that we get. So basically, the money that we're asking for is, we're not actually asking obviously for the money, we're asking for a kind of approval for us to ask ITD for that money.
That's the answer. And kind of subsequent, being able to use the reserves, that kind of fills in some of the other category that people might not want to be running overtime for, doesn't it?
Right.
Kind of.
Yes.
Keeping in mind that a reserve officer would have to have already worked 40 hours in that work week in order to be able to qualify for it.
Oh, sometimes some of the guys like to do it more than others.
I will say, too, that in the past years, and they've kind of trimmed it back and started offering the mini grants, but there used to be anywhere from 8 to 10 different emphasis a year, and I think now they're offering 5
Yeah.
or 6 standard emphasis.
Yes. Last year, I think we started at 4, and we ended up with 6 or 7. They added a couple throughout the year, but even this year, looking right now is what they've projected, it's 4 or 5. It's not a whole lot that they're projecting, and when I had talked to them, and you can probably relate to this too, but I think that they're trying to get the departments to do more of their own mini grant type stuff, and then and maybe that's because it's easier suited for the departments. I don't know, but.
An example would be that, everyone's homecoming is a different time, or some sort of event where you have,
Right.
A lot of people out and about, and you want to make sure people are being safe, and so you can apply to do an emphasis over a period of time when you know that your population is going to increase or there might be other safety hazards out.
Yeah.
So, and I actually, coming into this last year, had kind of high hopes of doing some of those mini grants along the ideas of like Dad's Weekend, Mom's Weekend, stuff like that. What
Yeah.
I didn't realize at the time was with our campus division that we have with our contracted issues with them, Captain Barrett was already setting up overtime stuff for those weekends as well. And so it kind of became obsolete for me to try and get ITD to pay for us to do that as well. So we just utilized it in other areas, but yeah, those are perfect examples of times of high traffic area where we might do mini grant type things.
So with the mini grants that you're talking about for equipment, that you don't have to come back before us because we would say, okay, you can get up to 50,000. I wonder if that's not a really good PR moment, though. You know, a good moment to come before the council
present.
and let us know. And I'm looking at Chief, and not for approval, but just for information services as far as, you know, the safety of the community and that sort of thing.
You
Gary?
can certainly give reports and that sort of thing, but there's also a time frame, and it gives the flexibility to be able to act. Certainly
Sure.
get the
Oh, yeah.
information to the council, put press releases out, information like that, but
I like the idea of informing the public and informing us with what's really cool.
Okay, gotcha.
So press releases or whatever, I think is a very good plan. And I agree with the time frame. There's nothing worse than a slowdown in a deadline that just makes you
Sure.
nervous to start with. So
So,
I understand.
and just so you're aware, on the actual emphasis that I do, anytime that we have an emphasis, I do do a press release on that, as well as we try to
seen those.
usually incorporate some Facebook action or whatever. But I haven't actually been involved with one of the mini grants, especially a big one like we're going to try to do for our equipment. So that was something that we could definitely put together a good information packet for and make anybody aware who wanted to be.
That'll be interesting to see too, if someone gets stopped in Nez Perce or wherever, and then they come here, if they re-offend in one day. I'm always like the queen of doing exactly what's right, 50.000 miles per hour kind of a thing after I get stopped. So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
see that outcome. Do you have any questions? Okay.
Just one more.
Mr.
Is there any one or two items in the citations list that stand out more than others from the statistic you gave? Like,
Going back through, I was actually impressed at how many actual DUIs we had last year. I think the year before that, I didn't see nearly as many on there. And I would attribute most of that to actually enforcement of the officers, because being here I'm in my 4th year now, and I came from Nez Perce County, did 5 years down there. And we would find DUIs down there like you find traffic stops here. I mean, it was just much more prevalent. When I came here, it was actually a lot more difficult to actually seek out and enforce DUI stuff. So to see the numbers of DUIs that we had during those emphasis that were there for DUIs was really impressive to me. I think it was a good sign.
cool.
Awesome.
I like the idea of the equipment, too. I think it's really helpful, just like you do.
I do too. I definitely do.
Rock on.
Well, I say we recommend approval.
okay.
I think so, too.
And consent, sir? Is
Yes,
that-
ma'am.
All right.
Sweet.
Thank you
Perfect.
very
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Lisa, thank you. Our next item is the Memorandum of Understanding with the University of Idaho regarding liability and responsibility.
And I'm sitting in for the city attorney.
Yep, you don't look a bit like Mia.
Yeah, I don't, do I? If I were her, I'd take that as a great compliment. What you have before you, if you look on the back of the CCSR sheet, you'll see it is a standard MOU to deal with responsibility for financial risk. Both the city and the university are covered by the Idaho Tort Claims Act. And as we negotiate contracts with the university, typically, we will have an allocation of liability within those contracts, and typically they say exactly what you see on here. Now, some of those contracts are older, we're negotiating all the time, but there are situations that come up pretty quickly where we'd like to have something standard. So what we've done is we've talked to University Council, we've had the Latah County Prosecutor look at it as well, and of course, City Attorney's Office. I've looked at it myself. All it really says is that, you know, we understand we're both covered by the Tort Claims Act. We're essentially responsible for what we do, and we want to protect the limitations that the statutes give us. So this is a standard document that would cover activities that aren't negotiated separately. Meaning, if we have like the emergency services contract we have with the U of I, where it's a 3-year renewable situation, the university pays us X amount of dollars for those emergency services. There may be different types of allocation of liability in there. Certainly you want to have that as part of the document. You could also reference this and make it part of the document if you like, but we wanted something that would be applicable throughout. Now, we are also working with the university regarding student activities. For instance, if a running club, U of I running club, student running club, wanted to hold a fun run through the streets of the city, typically we would have some kind of hold harmless and indemnification, maybe a requirement for insurance. It would have been nice to have that run through the university. The university, of course, those clubs are not subject to standard university regulation. In other words, they don't go through general counsel's office before they hold an activity. So we're still talking about how we can maybe standardize that process as well. But this puts us, the university, and Latah County have all looked at this, and this is acceptable language for allocation of liability. So we'd like the council to authorize it. We will then submit it to the university. University will go through their processes, get it signed, and then we will have it as far in the future as we think we need it.
Makes sense to me in a housekeeping sort of way. Certainly improves efficiency.
I think that we are recommending approval of the MOU between the city and the university regarding liability and responsibility.
Okay.
Consent, or
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
want to put it out? Okay,
No, that's fine. As Art indicated, it is very housekeeping.
housekeeping-ish.
It just cuts down on the amount of time we have to spend working on individual situations.
Okay. Our final item is office building lease.
This is something I've been in communication with the council over the past couple of months. As you know, we have serious space issues, both in the Mann Building and City Hall, the third floor. We've essentially utilized all the office space we can up there. At any rate, we have additional office space that's necessary. In the meantime, about 3 months ago, we were approached, or it became known to us that American Insurance was moving out of 203 East 3rd, which is right across the street from City Hall. It's about 1,700 square feet. They, of course, moved farther down Washington Street to 6th and Washington. The office space very close to City Hall would relieve a lot of the, not a lot, but it will relieve enough of the issues that we could relocate certain operations or offices over to that space, pending several things that are going on. Not the least of which is the new police station that we're hoping to have a bond election next spring. If that is successful, we will build a police station, vacate the 4th Street facility as has been presented to council, and remodel of that 4th Street facility to create some additional office space. Would be kind of a trickle-down effect to where we would be able to take care of a lot of the office issues. One thing I always like to bring up is when I came to the city in 1992, we had 88 employees. We now have 156.
Wow.
And
Wow.
part of that is the additional programs. When I came here, I think we had 5 or 6 commissions. Now we have 12.
Yeah.
We have more miles of street, more parks to take care of. We have a human resources department that we didn't have at the time. So we have a lot of things that the community has demanded service, that we provided service, but we've utilized all the free office space that we have. So what you have before you is a lease with Robin Woods, who is the owner of that building. There are a few tweaks to it that we're still negotiating, such as snow removal, things like that. But it should be ready by the time it goes to council next week.
Okay.
We would take possession of the facility no later than January 1. You saw what the negotiated price is, $1 a square foot, which we've checked with everybody is pretty standard for downtown. It is a 3-year lease. This was not a budgeted item, so we would be taking it out of general fund capital projects. We are treating it as a capital project. We are segregating, if you will, the whole 3-year lease needs and putting that aside within the capital projects fund so that we are not depending on new monies coming in. As we would if we hired somebody, we wouldn't want to pay for continuing liabilities with one-time monies. We're treating this as a one-time money, so we're segregating that entire amount out. And with that, we have 2 years of renewals, a single year at a time. That was specifically, the 3 years was specifically supposed to coincide with the construction of a new police station and the remodel of the 4th Street facility. So everything goes right. At the end of the first 3-year period, we should be ready to move into that facility. If that doesn't happen, we bought ourselves a little time and to make some other decisions. But essentially, it was the need, the timeliness. We had no idea that office space was going to come open when the budget was developed. So we will bringing this back to you for an appropriation in the open budget process for the FY18 or FY19 budget. And because of its close proximity to City Hall. It's just across the street, and there's just not a lot of office space. It's that proximal to City Hall. So with that, we would request a recommendation to approve the lease.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I'm looking at section 9, alterations, and I'm wondering if you're anticipating that we'll need to make any modifications to that building?
We aren't at this time. That is pretty standard stuff. So if, for instance, painting, if the paint over there is in pretty good shape, the landlord will touch it up. If we want a different color, then we have to pay for it. So it's pretty standard stuff. We aren't anticipating any alterations, although we will have to make it either get fiber over to the building or make a wireless connection back to City Hall. So that may be an alteration. But no, we don't anticipate any structural alterations. There is a door where we don't think a door needs to be. It's a matter of taking the door off its hinges, so it just becomes a passageway. But no, we're not anticipating any knocking out walls or any of that stuff.
What are you estimating in terms of cost for the fiber?
Jesse was working on that. I'm not sure. We'd have to run it. I thought he said $5,000, but I could be wrong. We would just have to bring it across from the current police station where there is fiber access, across Washington and then into the building. And that would be done by, well, we'd hire a contractor to do it, but that would all be done by the Information Systems Department.
Okay. Well, I have no problem with it.
Nope.
I think
And
it's,
it's well explained, the need is there,
Yeah.
and this is a solution that coincides nicely in the timeline.
very fortuitous that this occurred when it did and
It
where
is
it did.
fortuitous.
So recommend approval of that attached
you.
lease with Robin Woods for office space located at 203 East 3rd. And that cannot be on consent, right?
Yeah, it can, if you want it on consent.
Do we have any reason to pull it out and talk about it?
I don't think
All right, everything goes on consent, Mr. Reedner.
It's engineering moving in there, correct?
We're looking at, most likely the design group that does our infrastructure projects would likely go over there. There is some additional space, so we're trying to identify, it looks to be about enough space for 2 people. So we're looking at what different operations we could move over there as well. Because we want to make maximum use of the space if we're paying for it. But we haven't got to that point yet.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
Not for me.
Ian? Anything from the audience? I almost said peanut gallery, but it's the mayor. Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let's adjourn.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.